a podcast about product management, user experience design, technology, and more. This is Product by Design. Right, welcome to another episode of Product by Design. I am Kyle Evans, your host, and today we have another special guest, Ed Vincent, who has worked on some really cool things and is currently working on an exciting new company. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. It's called festivalPass. But let me kind of introduce you, Ed, real quick, and then you can kind of tell us a little bit more about your background. But
Sure.
Ed, you are an entrepreneur and founder multiple times over at this point. And you've worked in technology and management for over 20 years with companies like A&E Networks, AMC, ScreenVision, MovieTickets.com, MoviePass, and are currently working on festivalPass, which we will talk more about. But first off, welcome to our podcast, Ed. And do you want to fill us in a little bit more on your background?
Sure. Thanks, Kyle. Happy to be here, and I appreciate us having this conversation. There's always a little bit of context to why people build companies, and I think you touched a little bit upon my background, but it might be helpful to kind of walk a little bit through it, because that context helps of why this, why today, why now. Part of it, I think what you had in there, I was right out of school, a banker in New York, an investment banker that only lasted until about 1999, when I realized that I'd rather be building companies than consulting or helping finance companies.
Yeah.
So I started an e-commerce company in 1999, sold that in 2001. And then for most of the 2000s, I had an experiential marketing agency in New York called Vincent Partners, but we helped a lot of big brands come to big events. So a lot of music and film festivals, et cetera. And it was a lot of fun during that time. And it really got me to start appreciating and love this special moment that happens at a live event. We helped the Vail Film Festival launch. We did work with Sonoma Valley Film Festival. We even owned a film festival down in the Dominican Republic called the Dominican International Film Festival, and even built a hotel down there with Maxim Magazine back in the 2000s, which was a lot of fun. But fast forward a little bit, I then had a software as a service business for retail and multi-unit businesses. We sold that in 2014. And then following that, had a company called Predict Analytics, which you referenced a bunch of the companies we worked with, but we really helped identify and create a consumer data strategy for a lot of big brands in television and film, like A&E Networks and AMC Networks and ScreenVision and Movie Tickets, et cetera. And during that time, you referenced an infamous brand called MoviePass, which we can talk about a little bit. It's there's a lot to unravel there, but I was asked at that time, because of our experience in data in the television and film space, to come and help MoviePass with their data strategy. I even went in-house as a consultant, not a full-time employee, for about 18 months as their interim chief data officer, to really help them figure out what to do with data on 3.5 million people. But I think part of the process of getting to where we are today was all about my experiential time. First of all, having a commerce business online, which is how do you sell online, to having an experiential background and understanding what live events are. 3, having a subscription as a service business, realizing how much subscription is important for businesses to have recurring revenue streams. 4, going into the pure data side of entertainment and really understanding consumer behavior. To now, I'm taking a lot of the learnings of what MoviePass did wrong, and some companies out there that did right, like ClassPass, in terms of a business model, and to emulate that, the good things, avoid the bad, and do it in a model that is huge. The live event business is a $200 billion business, global, and there's a lot of fundamentals within the live event business that lend itself to a marketplace model. And we can get into a lot of that, but there's a little context of the why today, why festivalPass. It wasn't just I woke up one day and said, hey, I like events, or I like festivals, I want to go sell tickets.
Nice. That's super interesting. And I want to dive into festivalPass, but you touched on MoviePass, which a lot of us are probably familiar with and probably remember. And I noticed them in the news recently because the former founder purchased what was left of MoviePass out of bankruptcy. But by way of background, it was a movie ticket subscription service where you could pay a monthly fee and then get a certain number of movie tickets to go to a theater and actually see a movie, which was super, super interesting as it kind of disrupted the market, but then also failed somewhat spectacularly through, I guess there were a number of things that kind of went with it from what I remember and what I have read about it after the fact. But you being part of that, maybe you can tell us, some of your experience with it and, what were some of the things that worked and, where didn't that work specifically? Sure.
So at the core, there was two major issues, and we can dig into whatever you want to dig into. But one, the business model wasn't good. Whenever you have a situation where you don't control the cost of goods sold and it's an unlimited model, you get into a situation where you can't predict what the costs of the business are. So there's many ways to solve it, and there's many ways to have fixed it. But that leads kind of into the second piece of it, which, the way the company was financed, it was financed after it was bought from the original founders, it was financed as a publicly traded company, owned the majority stake in the underlying company. And in order to finance the business, they would go out and raise money in the public markets. And once it was at a place where the company needed to continuously fund the business through selling new shares, that diluted the shares, and then a lot of short sellers came in and made it harder for them to raise capital. That's two kind of combined things that make it hard when you can't predict your costs, and then when, in order to meet the needs of those costs, you have to go raise public money in a public way and share information. Those are two combinations that make it hard to fully succeed. And there was a lot of ways to fix that. So that's some of the bad, like in terms of, what wasn't being done right. There was many ways it could have been fixed by limiting the number of movies people see on a monthly basis, by charging more money, by creating more of a credit-based currency. There's a lot of ways to fix it. But some of the good things that I learned a lot, especially as the interim chief data officer, is how powerful data is on a national level across the entire country. I mean, when MoviePass had 3.5 million subscribers, it really was the best data set in the entire industry. No studio had better because they only had data from their own movies. No chain like AMC or Regal or anybody had better because all they had was data from their own business. So nobody had a geographically dispersed, statistically relevant, full genre data set like MoviePass did, because they had members in every state, in every community going. And every time they'd go to a movie, we knew at MoviePass exactly what movie they went to see, and it was deterministic data. So you had to have the app, and you had to be able to identify who was going into the movie. Whereas even today, some of the other data sets include somebody either paying cash at the door when they go to a movie or using a credit card. And by the time you actually attach that credit card to the 5 tickets they bought for their family, you don't know who actually was sitting in the movie. So anyway, that's some of the positive things, is really understanding with a proper data set, it's powerful. The other thing is, and this is lending itself into what we're doing here at festivalPass, is having the ability to understand the likes and dislikes of a large majority of people enable you to help the smaller businesses get exposure. So meaning on the movie side, whenever a blockbuster comes out, there's tens of millions of dollars being spent on marketing. And of course, they're going to find a way to get a ticket to it, whether it's through MoviePass or Fandango or anywhere else. However, there's a lot of independent films that don't have the ability to get that exposure or the marketing budget to do so. So it was interesting. We would find that whenever at MoviePass, you'd place an independent film, recommended right next to a blockbuster, because some of the users had been to horror films in the past, or they've been to romantic comedies or whatever it is. MoviePass would sell a ton of tickets for movies that wouldn't have that kind of exposure. So I relate that to even what we're doing on the event level. Our name is festivalPass, but we're all live events, right? So we have 80,000 events on the platform. It's every concert, every sporting event, every theater at Broadway, anything you want to go to that's live, we have. But when you can think about that capacity, is even on the festival level, because it's easy sometimes for people to understand that, is, of course, Coachella sells out every year. Of course, Rolling Loud sells out, all these like big major events, but there's thousands of others that may not sell out or may not have the marketing dollars or exposure or popularity, but are still amazing events. So the ability, as we grow our membership to hopefully millions of people, the ability to actually present really interesting events to our consumers that we already know are event goers and like to go to high frequency event goers and like to go out a lot, the ability to introduce other events, whether it's a band on a local level, whether it's a festival that still doesn't sell 10,000 of their 50,000 tickets or whatever it is, the ability for more and more people to discover things they didn't realize. So that's, I'll stop there because that's a lot to swallow, but that's a little bit about the learnings and a little bit about the future.
That's really, really interesting. We touched a lot on, some of the good and bad of MoviePass and then diving into festivalPass, what it is, the subscription for live events. As I was looking through it, it looks absolutely fascinating. And the ability, like you just mentioned, to get a broad spectrum of events, not just from the most popular, which a lot of us know, but to some of the local area type things that you may not have known about. You brought to my mind, my brother owns a small shop, and they in the back do concerts. So they do like concert weekends during the summer, and it can be somewhat limited to who knows about it, but being able to bring some of that to a much broader audience. I'd love to just hear more, like, how have you seen that start to play out, especially as we're coming out of COVID and people are starting to get back into live things. Like, what have been some of your experiences both in some of these bigger live events and then adding some of the smaller local things that may not have been happening and may not have been that well publicized?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that are currently there and others that are kind of on the roadmap that are coming out very soon. Is of course the ability to search through the events in every capacity that you might want to find in terms of your local area or your local band or whatever it is, just being able to know where they're playing and what they're doing, kind of like a replacement for, trying to, in the old days, people would go to like, Time Out magazine or to radio station websites, whatever, just to find out what's going on, or like a band's in town kind of thing. Going forward is this one of our key things that we're doing is creating that social frictionless way to discover. So, in a traditional ticketing company, like, I won't name names, but you go to it and it's very transactional, right? So yes, you can go find a ticket, whether it's primary or secondary market. And, it's transactional when you buy it. The fees get tacked on the end, which are very non-transparent. People get frustrated. So we're all about transparency, never paying a ticketing fee. Basically we're giving back margin to the user by committing to that monthly subscription. So everybody wins, right? We might have less margin on the overall business, but recurring revenue has a higher multiple. So our enterprise value is bigger, even if our margin's less and the consumer is the one that's winning. So that's on the fee side. But now on the discovery side, what's exciting is, we're probably going to release our mobile app in the next couple of weeks. We've been mostly web-based to this point, but it's a very TikTok, Instagram-like experience, right? So it's the idea that, like on Instagram, when you follow your friends, who shows up in the feed, the people you follow, right? So in our world, people can follow their favorite performer, they can follow their favorite sports team, they can follow their favorite local venue, they can follow a specific event like ACL or Coachella. And when they do, right in their feed will be the listing of discovery of all the events associated with it. So you pick your local venue in town, every event at that venue is going to show up in your feed. So you're constantly reminded of what's going on tonight on a Wednesday night at Stubbs in Austin or whatever in Salt Lake City. But it's that ability to really curate your own experience. And then, of course, just like Netflix, just like anything else, there's still 80,000 other events in there. If you want to go to the search and type in whatever you want, you can do that. But it's the idea of this frictionless discovery. And then, of course, on the mobile app, the way TikTok works, people can just hold up their phone and just flip through it. And, hopefully over time we'll get more and more video. So it'll be a little more TikTok-like in the world of video, but right now it's mostly imagery.
That sounds really, really interesting. I'm excited to see that. We talked a little bit about some of the lessons that you've learned from MoviePass and from some of the others, but have there been things that you've learned along the way that work and don't work, especially when it comes to live events?
Yeah. I mean, the event, especially from the ticketing side, it hasn't really been innovated on in decades. it's been the same old. And I think what we're learning is two things: is especially Gen Zs and millennials, they demand a better experience, right? So one, I mentioned earlier, the concept of a transactional experience as opposed to being part of a community. As a subscriber, we call them members, you're building this interaction with an overall community around passion points. I think that's super important for the go forward, that I think a lot of the transactional places fail. Second is the ability for discovery to happen and the ability for interactions to happen, as well as being able to communicate with artists directly within the platform. So we have a whole program, again, very close on the roadmap to be rolled out, but we have this badge concept where people can sign up for micro subscriptions on top of their base subscription. So if they're paying $50 a month for getting a certain amount of credits to use for live events, for an extra $5 or $10 a month, they might follow their favorite band or their favorite personality. And for that, they get certain benefits. Benefits could be first line in the ability to get tickets when they're released. It could mean, once a month that band or person's doing a virtual meet and greet. It could mean actual meet and greets at the show. It could mean lots of things. So it's the idea, almost like a super fan or almost like a digital fan club subscription. But doing that in combination with the ability to access the tickets right there is pretty interesting for both the member and the artists, because we're creating additional revenue streams for the artists, which are great. And then on top of that, you'll see directly soon after that, we'll be minting some NFTs for the artists directly within the platform. So when you have that group of super fans that are following them, those are the most likely consumers to want to participate in an artist NFT. And again, in the millennial Gen Z space, we're all moving towards this place where it's a creator economy where artists should be able to monetize and have that digital asset relationship directly with their fan.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's super exciting stuff. And you touched on one of the questions I wanted to dive into a little bit more is how was the engagement with the actual creators? Because, you mentioned that allowing for, some of these additional perks and following and interaction. Are there other ways that you're engaging with, the actual creators of some of these, whether it's the creators of the festival or concert or the actual musicians and things like that, in order to bring them closer to the people who are their fans and are paying for what they're providing?
Yeah. So on the event side, of course, we're talking to a lot of event producers and event owners and venue owners in order to give them an opportunity to reach another audience, which are our members. So we'll continue to find ways to we've even considered and will likely do kind of branded subscriptions. The same micro subscription we would do for an artist could be the same for a local venue. So the local venue, Rock Club XYZ, they might say, hey, well, I want to have a mini subscription on top of FestivalPass, and we'll give special access to anybody who's part of our venue subscription on it, right? So, and then we'd share some of that revenue back with the venue or back with the event itself. On the artist side, absolutely. So we've been leaning heavily into that. I mentioned when we were getting ready for the call that I just got back from Aspen Live Music Conference. And, at that conference, it was full of talent managers that represent some of the biggest artists, as well as some of the more independent artists. And every single one of them is super excited about building and fostering a direct relationship with us and with the fans so that the artist, the creator can find other ways to monetize things that they're creating outside of the traditional economic system that's been around for decades.
Yeah, that super interesting. And you mentioned, getting into some of the NFTs. Have you experimented with that at all yet? Or is this going to be kind of the first foray into some of the experimentation with NFTs and artists?
Yeah, so we have not yet, but we have a strategy and a plan to roll it out. So first thing you'll see on FestivalPass, call it within the next 30 days, if not 30, 60, just simply allowing our members to attach their crypto wallets to the platform so that one, they could pay their subscriptions or buy tickets with cryptocurrencies. So that's the first kind of step into making that happen. Two, soon thereafter, or even parallel, you'll see more and more of these micro subscriptions popping up for the artists. And then I'd say it's probably more of a 3 to 6 month out time frame where our members will actually be able to mint NFTs right there on the platform. And then, of course, those NFTs can trade anywhere, whether they trade on OpenSea or Coinbase or anywhere else. It's really the ability for the artist to connect directly with their fans within the festivalPass platform. So everybody wins.
No, that's super exciting stuff. I love it. Have you encountered, well, let me ask first, you've got a lot of stuff currently and then coming down the pipeline. How do you kind of go about prioritizing, where you think the biggest value is, or, what some of the most important things are now and kind of midterm and longer term?
Sure. So I think we're effectively a marketplace, right? So whenever you look at any kind of marketplace that you build, you have two sides of a marketplace, supply and demand. So in order for demand to happen, you need supply, or vice versa. So we had to put a flag in the ground to say, well, what do we really need first? The good news is on the consumer side, the concept of creating awareness and acquisition of new members is really a function of money. At the end of the day, really, the as long as coming from a digital marketing kind of background and perspective, as long as you understand your KPIs, know how much money you have to spend to make somebody aware of the offering you have, you can grow, by 1,000 members a week, or you can grow by 20,000 members a week if you have the cash to spend against it, because as long as you have a good offering. So the hard part initially was to say, okay, well, what do we do first? And we chose to make sure we have supply first. So we've, done deals with a bunch of products within the secondary market as well as the primary market, so that we do have 80,000 events on the platform. So anybody coming and joining festivalPass can rest assured that they're definitely going to find an event they want to go to. So that was one of the challenges, is to decide what route to take. Do we go one by one, building out primary relationships that might take a long time to get enough inventory, or do we just go really hard after the inventory so that when people join, they immediately get value? So that's the priority we chose, right? So now we're at a place where we have a lot of great inventory. There's more we will still want to get, and there's a lot of relationships that we're building directly with the artists and directly with the venue owners or producers. But we have great inventory now, so anybody signing up will always have cool stuff to do. So now, fast forward on the marketplace side of supply and demand, of course, there's a bunch of the feature sets. Any good web company, or call it online company, the product roadmap is very long.
Yeah.
So it's really just deciding on which social features to add first. And that's why I shared with you kind of the roadmap on the Web3 crypto side. Is you can't boil the ocean. So for us, it's like, okay, let's just make sure people that are interested in the crypto world can have their wallets attached, because you can't sell NFTs unless the wallet's attached. So let's just get something out. Let's provide value immediately, which is, hey, I want to trade or buy and sell or use my cryptocurrency to get tickets. Great. And that's a prerequisite for any of the other things we want to do anyway. So that's the way I look at priorities: is what value proposition does it solve today? And then what can we add to it in the future without having to reconstruct the entire technology platform.
Right. No, that makes sense. Very, very interesting. You've talked a little bit about, getting a lot of different live events on, and there are upwards of 80,000, I think you mentioned. Have you experienced resistance either initially or kind of ongoing, or has it been pretty widely accepted that, this kind of subscription model for festivals is going to be something that works? And if you have experienced, some of either the friction or resistance, like how have you worked to overcome that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there are enough people, especially in the younger kind of set, that have experienced the way credit-based subscriptions work, but not everybody, right? So those who have ever joined ClassPass, and there's millions of subscribers, get it, because they know if they pay a monthly fee, they get credits and they can use it. The only difference with us is credits roll over. So you never lose credits as long as you're a paying member. Whereas in things like ClassPass, you lose your credits if you don't use them in the month. So we look at it as like a bank account. So the ability for people, even if they sign up for $50 a month and only went to one event this month, it's okay, because the credits will continue to roll over. And 2 or 3 months down the road, they might have enough credits to go to a big festival if they wanted, or they could choose to use it to go to 10 smaller events. So it's up to them. So that's an important differentiator. And then In terms of the friction, it's really about education. I will readily admit we have tons of people that come and sign up as a free membership, but it's really about educating them on the value of why to join as a paid. And we're in that process now. So, the idea of converting our many tens of thousands of members into fully paying members is a process. So, this is just more the background entrepreneurial story. We have a new landing page going up next week that takes people through the value proposition and gives a little slider of a calculator that says, well, hey, you would have paid $100 for the ticket anywhere else. If you're a founding member of festivalPass, which is the top tier member, you would have saved $36. So it's like just showing people the value proposition visually, I think will greatly help that conversion into the paid. And then once they are a member and they start seeing, oh, wow, I can engage in this way, I continue to save money, and now I'm first in line to buy NFTs of my favorite artist, it starts getting exciting.
That's great. So let me ask, what are we've talked about a whole bunch of different things that are coming, that are currently happening. What are you most excited about with both within the space, with what you're doing and what the future looks like?
Yeah, I think I'm talking about a lot of those things. One, I'm excited that 2022 really will be a breakout year for the live events business. I think, up until the last 6 months has been a slow return. So there's been, it depends on what state you live in. Texas and Florida, there's events every day. Other places there may not be. Broadway's back as of September. So there's a lot of things happening and everybody's kind of coming back to it in their own ways. Obviously, everybody's still being cautious. Hopefully vaccination rates continue to increase to make it easier, and those who choose not to can still get tested. But we're in a place where I think people are getting more and more comfortable living with our current situation, so that more and more live events are happening. I already know there's already double the events planned for 2022 than there were in 2019. The inventory is large, the demand is large, so I get excited about how interesting the industry will be for a full year of actually live. So there's that piece. And then the second piece is personally super fascinated by, the crypto space and the NFT space. And I think 2021 was a tipping point where it's become a mainstream conversation. And I still believe, 95% of the US population doesn't even know what an NFT is yet. And that's okay, because you're either a super crypto enthusiast and you get it, and then you jump right in and you're like, I'm in. But the other 90% has to find a path of where it makes sense. And I think our platform's the ideal solution for that education, because all I know is I like my artists. All I know is I like to go to live events. And when I'm engaging in the platform and I say, oh, wow, my favorite music artist has this really cool thing that gives me utility and something I can do with it. And if I buy it, the artist is getting the money. Therefore, it's not going to a bunch of other places. And by the way, this thing might be worth 10x what I paid for it in a year. That's interesting. But at least I can try that out. It's not some sometimes to some investors, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum in general, where they just don't fully understand it. They just think it's, something that's a phantom thing that maybe someday will be worth more. Whereas if we can put utility to it and say, well, even if it isn't worth more in the future, by having it, you get to do all these cool things, then I think the general population will start getting that and understanding it. And as they say in the crypto world, ape into it.
That's right. Yeah, that is a super exciting space to be in, especially at the juncture of, where a lot of the Web 2 is meeting Web 3, and where the live events start to meet, where early adopters start to meet some of the more mainstream, and it just makes it that much easier. I'm really excited for that space as well, like where it just becomes much more integrated and much easier to both engage directly with creators like you're talking about, and then also, in the things that we're already doing, have some of those Web3 crypto things very easily available, whether it's NFTs or other things coming down the pike. It's exciting. 2022 is going to be really, really interesting. And I'm excited live events are coming back too. We've already got some concerts that we've bought tickets to and whatnot. It's coming back. And that probably mirrors what you've seen as well. Like, especially you mentioned, doubling from 2019 live events. Have you been seeing a steady increase in live events as different states and different areas start to come back from where we have been more restricted and locked down?
I have, and I think there's also just the intuitive nature of it is creators, which are the songwriters and bands. This is more the music side, but it's really applicable anywhere. Is they've been, sitting for the last 2 years at home writing music. They need to get out and share that music, right? So they got to tour, and when they go to tour, that just creates that much more inventory.
Well, that's great. All right, let me ask if there's anything else that you kind of want to mention or talk about, or before we move on to some of the final questions.
Yeah, I think you got a good picture of what we're excited about. So I think that's most of it.
All right, I will semi-end with a last question here before we move to kind of our final section. But any favorite thing that you've been reading recently or have read recently?
Oh, you mean like a book or?
Yeah, book or anything like that.
Well, podcast wise, I mean, obviously I talked a lot about NFTs. So there's, I barely go to the gym without having an NFT podcast in my ear. So Bankless, if you don't know what Bankless is, it's a great podcast that kind of gives a full weekly rundown of what it is. NFT 365, this guy Fanzo talks every day. He's minting a new NFT. So it's just fun to listen to stuff like that, to really understand the different perspectives of, how people are talking about it. So those are two things. Just from a pure business perspective, one of my favorite books has always been Measure What Matters by John Doerr, as a venture capitalist, but it's been a kind of a system that many fast growth companies have used, but there's a whole process to it, but it's very simple. It's really tying, quarterly and annual goals into daily KPIs. So that I like. And then, other than that, I'm excited for some of the silly TV shows that keep coming back. I went to see I was at I think it was a country music festival in Austin at Coda, at an amphitheater where Chris Stapleton, Willie Nelson, a few others were playing. And one of the kind of lead-in singers was a guy on a TV show called Yellowstone. I don't know if anybody watches the TV show Yellowstone, but he was an actor and did most of the music on the show. And seeing him live got me to go watch the show. And then once I watched the show, I got caught up in it and watched all 3 seasons. So now I hear there's a prequel coming out with Tim McGraw and Faith Hill starring in it. So I'm going to be watching that. Nice. Even though before moving to Texas, I never listened to a lick of country in my life.
Oh, that's good. Too good. But now, is it all country all the time, or just?
No, not at all. I just love singer-songwriters. Yep. So for example, I grew up in New Jersey. I mean, Bruce Springsteen is the ultimate singer-songwriter. Some might say he's got the best voice. Some might say he doesn't, but at the end of the day, his poetry is great. And so, I kind of rolled into country by Chris Stapleton because he's just an amazing poet and singer-songwriter. So I almost could care less about the quote unquote genre, more so the message and the poetry.
Absolutely. No, that's good. All right. Well, Ed, it has been really, really great talking. I think there's been an amazing conversation on a whole bunch of different topics, which is super exciting because I am very, very excited about all of them going forward. Where can people find out more about you and about festivalPass?
Sure. So festivalpass.com, the easiest place to find out more about the actual, the actual company and sign up. You can sign up for free. You don't have to pay right away. You can sign up, explore things. And then when you decide to engage and buy a ticket, you can then move to a paid subscription. We're on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok partially. And then me personally on a business side, really just on LinkedIn is the best place to find me. But outside of that, festivalpass.com, just festivalpass on all the socials, and you'll be able to find us.
Awesome. Well, this has been really great. Again, we'll put the links in the show notes as well. Okay. And before we go, we always end with a shout out or gripe. So I don't know if you've brought anything that you are using or from products or technology that you are enjoying or not enjoying. You want to either give a shout out or a gripe to.
There's a balance of great future potential, but frustration in using it is this might get too technical. Is it even worth saying it? But
say it.
Yeah, we build our application in React, and by doing so, React isn't statically rendered pages, so it makes it hard for SEO. And you can imagine with 80,000 events, 50,000 performers, SEO is important to us. So we use a product called Gatsby, and that automatically statically renders 300,000 pages that are on our website. But that being said, the concept of it is great and the system is great. But sometimes it gets frustrating because, might take an extra 10 minutes to rebuild a change on the website. You got to wait for it before you can see it. And, so it's a gripe and a shout out all at the same time.
That mirrors my experience too. So we've used both React and Gatsby as well in a couple companies and products that we were doing. And it has some really strong points and some areas that are not quite as good. So I hear you. Anybody who's used it probably has similar shout outs and gripes to make about it.
But I can only imagine they're going to fix it soon because so many people rely on it.
Yep. No, that's great. I'll give a shout out. I thought you were going to take mine because you said Balance there, but there's a new app that I've been using called Balance. And it comes, I love it's kind of like not a mind game, but like a mind, just knowledge improvement game type thing called Elevate. And so they also created an app called Balance that I've been trying out, and really, really cool. So Elevate, the game, is amazing. I love those. And then Balance, it's been a kind of a cool meditation app among some other heavy hitters. So I've used a couple of them, but it's a good one if you're interested.
I love it. I will check it out. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Balance, and we start every one of our all hands meetings with a centering exercise, and then it really helps us kind of a mini meditation before we start. So I get it.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's good. And they were giving away basically free trials for the next year. So I was like, well, I'm using a different one, but I'm going to try them both at the same time and see.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, Ed. And I really appreciate it. We'll put the links in the show notes and look forward to hearing and seeing more about what's coming with FestivalPass. It sounds super exciting going into 2022.
And all those concert tickets you're buying, you should buy them through FestivalPass.
I know. I regret not doing it. We bought some, it's a few months ago. So I'm going to definitely start doing that through FestivalPass now. I'm going to check it out and we'll get on there.
Cool. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks again for listening. If you like the show, be sure to follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. You can follow the show on Twitter at ProdByDesign. That's prod_by_design. You can follow me at Kyle Larry Evans on Twitter as well. If you want more product conversation, check out my newsletter, Product Thinking, at productthinking.cc. You can follow me on Medium at Kyle Larry Evans as well, or check out my Medium publication, Product by Design. Thanks again.